Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. On behalf of Solve Agri Pak Private Limited and GGI-SPERMEX, I take this opportunity to warmly welcome all the participants for this webinar on German breeding philosophy and the differences to the US system that is jointly organized by Solve Agri Pak Private Limited and our partner GGI-SPERMEX from Germany. Let us begin with the recitation from the Holy Quran, and then we will continue our further discussion on this webinar.
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا
Before we further proceed, I would like to welcome warmly our honorable guests and all the participants in this meeting. We have the honor to have with us Honorable Vice Chancellor, University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Lahore, Professor Dr. Naseem Ahmed, Vice Chancellor, Cholistan University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Bahawalpur, Professor Dr. Sajjad Khan Sahab. We have the honor to have with us the Secretary, Livestock and Dairy Development Department, Government of Punjab. And I think we will also have the Provincial Minister, Livestock and Dairy Development Department, Government of Punjab, Mr. Sardar Hasnain Bahadur Dureshik. So as we move forward, before I continue further, I would like to mention a few housekeeping things. All the participants are requested to please keep your mic muted. And once we go through the presentations and the session, if you have any questions, please add your questions in the comment box, in the chat box, and I'll moderate those questions to the speakers when appropriate. At the end of the presentation, we will have a question and answer sessions. And in this question and answer session, if you are interested to ask any question, you are requested to use the raise hand button on your Zoom screen. And then I will direct the participants to ask the questions directly to the speakers. So that is it. First of all, in order to warmly welcome officially on behalf of Solve Agri Pak Private Limited, I would like to request the Honorable Chairman, Solve Agri Pak Private Limited, Mr. Haroon Mahmood Khan Lodi, to say a formal welcome to all of you. Haroon sir, please.
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। वसीम साहब मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
जी आपकी आवाज आ रही है सर।
चले, good. Warm welcome to all the participants from Pakistan and from Germany. Thank you very much for taking out time. I'll just briefly tell you what Solve Agri is, what is our background. We started back in 2011. And we have been adding value to the dairy farmers of Pakistan in the areas like breeding, nutrition, calf rearing and calf nutrition, informed mechanization. Our philosophy has been to impart knowledge to the dairy farmers of Pakistan. For that, we started Solve Agri and Dairy Institute. We have been conducting a couple of trainings for dairy farmers of Pakistan. Lately, our focus has been on the small farmers, especially the female farmers of Pakistan, and we have been conducting many trainings on that topic for different organizations. In breeding business, we have been in last 8 years, we have been marketing American genetics in Pakistan. But now we've started with German genetics in addition to North American genetics. And idea is to provide knowledge about German genetics to the Pakistani market. With GGI, we started in 2020, early 2020. And our plan was to get experts from Germany to come to Pakistan, speak to the farmers and share the German philosophy of breeding. But due to COVID, it has been delayed. So now we thought it's time that we use the technology and bring that knowledge to the farmers of Pakistan. Just a brief about German philosophy. Basically, Holstein is a town of Germany from where this breed started. And Germans have a specific philosophy which basically includes milk production, good components, feet and leg, health, longevity, the traits which we think are very, very suitable for the Pakistani market. But German genetics have not been marketed in Pakistan the way North American genetics have been marketed in Pakistan. North American genetics have been marketed in Pakistan for the last 50 years. But German genetics, no work or no knowledge has been passed on. So our idea was to give that option to the farmers, give that knowledge to the farmers so they have the widespread when they select bulls for the next generation of their cows. So from my side, I think I again welcome all of you. In these sessions, you will have option to ask questions, but if there is anything which is not answered or you want to know more, you can always contact us, Wasim, Bakas, myself, or anyone in our organization, and we'll get back to you. So thank you very much from my side, Wasim.
Thank you very much, Harun Saab. I would like to request the Honorable Vice Chancellor, University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Lahore, Emeritus Professor Dr. Naseem Ahmed Tare Imtiaz for his reviews and his feedback, as well as his welcome message to this webinar. Naseem Saab. नसीम साहब आप हैं? प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर नसीम अहमद सर, आप आवाज सुन रहे हैं? I think something is not appropriate for his connection. I think may I also now request the Vice Chancellor, Cholistan University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Lahore, Bahawalpur, Professor Dr. Sajjad Khan Sahab.
Shukriya, Wasim. It's always quite pleasing. Can you hear me? Wasim, can you hear me?
Ji, Sajjad Sahab, you're audible.
Thank you. It's always pleasing to be part of any where capacity building is there, whether of farmers or any other stakeholders. I have been trying to learn this German setup of genetic evaluation since I think 5-6 years, when we were trying to jot down the minimums for semen import, and Germany was one of the countries. and I try to get used to guys' standards. Later, I think there was another company, OHG. I think they are also exporting German semen to Pakistan. We know that Germany has a good Holstein base and a very good genetic evaluation system. But frankly, it's very difficult to get the information for German evaluation setup. Still, if you go to one of the main site from where you can get these sire summaries downloaded, ISSW, it's difficult to download German sire summaries. So maybe we are not used to the German setup. Maybe my, for example, training is US genetic setup. I know it quite well. Or maybe the information is in German language. It is not easy, frankly, to compare the two systems. We do use the American base when we try to compare the bulls, because it's difficult. I've been trying to help the Punjab government to buy the exotic semen, and there we have to have a comparative evaluation of the semens that we are suggested that we should buy. So it's good that the capacity is being built, but I still feel that on the technical side, maybe not for everybody, but at least people who want to understand. For example, let me give an example, how the mature equivalent milk yield is being calculated. I would like to know that if Americans are adjusting it to 65 months of age, what Germans are doing. And the same is true for so many other indexes. We already have a problem with so many indexes, and the indexes for which the bulls are evaluated, even the one of the top index, TPI, we know that it has a lot of emphasis on protein, and protein is not the trait that our cattle are, the purebred or crossbred are being selected for, because we don't have protein as an economic parameter in Pakistan. So my request would be to my German colleagues and the AgriSolve that please make this information available to those who want to read. So marketing side, I hope maybe in the last year or so, maybe things have improved, because I have not contacted these different companies that frequently. But previously, at least, it was difficult to get the German technicals literature on genetic evaluation of bulls. So with that, I think I wish very good luck to AgriSolve and other colleagues who are trying to import German semen. I would like to learn more about what GGI is promoting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Sajjad Khan Sahab, the Vice Chancellor, Cholistan University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Bahawalpur. May I now invite the Chief Executive Officer of GGI-SPERMEX, Mr. Frank Stupenhuisen, for his welcome address. Mr. Frank, please.
Thank you very much, Bassem. Welcome to the audience. Welcome to everybody in Pakistan, and have a good afternoon. I've just left one meeting in a break, and I have to apologize that in about 50 minutes I have to turn back to another meeting. But nevertheless, I wanted to give you also a welcome note here. I think we have already heard some questions, and I'm quite sure that my colleague Nicola Schmalor and also especially Stefan Rensing from VIT in Pferden will have the chance to give you answers on several of these questions. Just a short introduction of GGI-SPERMEX. I'm the CEO of GGI-SPERMEX. We have two headquarters here in Germany, one in the north, where we also have a sexing facility, and another one down in southern Germany. And here in Germany, we dispose over 30 different bovine breeds in total. And of course, also Holstein Friesian is our measure breed here. Besides, we have numerous other breeds of high importance, which are also quite important for export as well. But today we have the theme here for the German breeding philosophy, and I hope, Stefan, especially you, are capable to give several answers now on the questions today, also according to the German system, and also which are the differences to the US system. So thank you very much for attention this afternoon, and I'm forwarding now to my colleague, our area sales manager, Nicolas Schmalor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frank. Now I would like to invite for a keynote address the Honorable Vice Chancellor, University of Veterinary and Animal Sciences, Lahore, Emeritus Professor Dr. Naseem Ahmed Sitara Imtiaz. Naseem sir, please.
Naseem, am I audible?
Ji sir, aapki awaaz aa rahi, please.
Yes. Sorry, first of all, I regret there was some error in the earlier on. Worthy Harun Lodi Sahib, worthy Professor Sajjad, Vice Chancellor, CUAS, worthy delegates, reps from the new German company, and all the participants, very good afternoon from Lahore in month of June. I'm thankful to Solve Agri for asking me to be part of this webinar on Zoom. I know Lodi Saab, our Dean Veterinary Sciences, and we started our internship program, and how immensely he was leading person in a commercial processing industry, helped us. And Wasim perhaps was our student, one of the bright students who chose during internship to go into a dairy sector, and ever since he has been in this, although I did a stint in university ORIC component. Thank you very much for rejoining on this afternoon. My number 2 point, I think, would like to refresh everyone that commercial dairying in Pakistan for the last almost a decade is growing at a good pace. We had corporate dairying, and we have now shifting towards more commercial dairying, and it's a very high input, high output model they are moving. And to me, when I was a student of veterinary medicine several decades ago, we know that this commercial dairying did not succeed due to several reasons, the management or the nutrition. But now this is a totally new time that it has been accepted, and it has been growing and growing well. I think now with the modern commercial dairying, perhaps that is the focus in today's topic as well, that this demands precision in the not only in nutrition, because that is the commercial driver for this enterprise, the health, and also reproduction. There have been immense technology advancements, as in the opening remarks, sex semen, and a country like Pakistan also has got benefit use of sex semen fairly decently in some of the commercial and corporate dairy sectors in Pakistan. So this is, I think, very, very heartening to know that this use of conventional semen, although sex semen is in practice, but perhaps we need to be aware to have more pregnancy rates out of these inseminations. That's what my reproduction background also, suggest me to ask. I think at this point, we already have in Pakistan, for this growing industry, commercial industry, we have exotics, crossbreds, dairies. We had semen, the sires are now all over available. The farm managers, the directors, and breeding in charges, they have access to American genetics, they have access to Dutch genetics, they have access to Australian genetics, and now today perhaps it's first time I am listening that Germans are also are available in Pakistan. So what their comparative advantage is over others, let it be good to have this awareness seminar, and I appreciate all the speakers, the new company which the Solve Agri has got into collaboration, and let's learn from them, and hopefully that we have now 44 participants, that it will be a useful activity for the commercial, primarily commercial dairy producers in Pakistan. Thank you all, and stay safe, stay healthy. And I'm glad to, at the end, to mention that COVID statistics, like worldwide, they are going down, and also in Pakistan, we are resuming to our new normal conditions. Thank you, Wasim. Back to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Honorable Vice Chancellor, University of Veterinary Animal Sciences, Lahore, shared his insights. I would like to now invite Mr. Nicholas Shamalor, the area manager at GGI-SPERMEX. Sorry, Nicholas, I am poor in pronunciation German names so far. So over to you. Please share your screen and let us start. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Wasim. The name was pronounced good, so no problem there. Warm welcome to everybody. Thank you for listening today. My name is Nicolas Schmalor, and I'm area manager at GGI-SPERMEX. I'd like to give you a short introduction to GGI-SPERMEX before we then go to our main topic today with Stefan Rensing. So, about me, maybe first a little bit. I'm 30 years old now. I'm grown up on a dairy farm in the middle of Germany. At home, we've got about 70 dairy cows and Holstein, all of them. And today my sister is running the farm. Over the last 10 years, I've done a few different jobs in the dairy industry. I've been in Australia and New Zealand for 1 year each. And now, since 2016, I'm working for GGI-SPERMEX as area manager. Who is GGI-SPERMEX? I'm going to give you a short introduction to that now. So GGI-SPERMEX is, hang on.
It's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So GGI-SPERMEX.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Okay, perfect. GGI-SPERMEX is the export organization of 12 of the 16 German breeding organization. So we combine the whole product of all our breeding organizations. What's this? Yeah. So GGI-SPERMEX was founded 2018 from two well-established largest German export organizations. From GGI, which was founded 1990, was taking care of the Holstein export, and SPERMEX, they were taking care of the Flag-Free and Brown Swiss export mainly. We've got a really big offer at both. We've got more than 30 dairy and beef breeds available, and we've got really a big expertise in exporting to more than 80 countries around the world. So of course, every country in Europe is on our list. We're exporting semen to North Africa, to the Middle East. Nearly every country in the Middle East gets semen from us, to Asia, up to China, Japan, in North America and South America, as well as in Central America and also Australia, New Zealand. We've got semen export to a lot of countries, or mainly every country where there are Holstein cows. The German AI centers and herd book organizations are all of them farmer-owned cooperatives. So that means the difference, or that means they have to get the best genetics and the best possible semen quality to their owners. That's their main job. So they are not, their job is not to make a high profit like you would have with a stock exchange like ABS. All that counts there is the profit in the end. For our owners, it's all that counts. That for our AI centers, is all that counts is that their owners are happy, and that's why they produce every semen store in Germany for the same quality. They don't make a difference at semen production where the semen will end up in the end, if you're going to export it, or if a farmer which owns them in the end will buy it. The quality is always the same. It's always 15 million, and with the same background. So there's no difference. We get asked a lot about our size. How many semen stores do we export? Probably best it is to talk about the bulls, how big we are. Our 12 AI centers, they buy annual 150 new Holstein bulls. So altogether, 2021 will buy 150 new Holstein bulls, which will go on AI. So we are, with that, not the biggest ones, but there are many other companies, you know, as you can see, which buying less bulls. So we are on a quite on a range to where we can keep up with them. Today we've got about 500 proven Holstein bulls on our offers. 173 of them are A2A2. Also red Holstein bulls, we've got 135, and genomic bulls, we've got about the same amount, 180 genomic Holstein bulls with 231 A2A2 bulls, and red Holstein 162 bulls. So that brings us to a total of about 1,000 Holstein bulls, which and 400 A2A2 bulls, which are available right now, and about 300 red Holstein bulls with 70 A2A2 bulls available. So as you can see, we've got quite a good offer for you. So for Germany, it's always was dairy production was important because Germany is the largest producer of milk in the European Union, and that's why we've got already 140 years of cattle breeding tradition in Germany. Today we do breeding since 1878. We've got since nearly 150 years now a herd book, and with that we've got data from more than 7 million cattle. So we can do, we've got a lot of data to the breeding, but I think Stefan Rensing will talk more about that. And just a few facts more about Germany. We've got with nearly 1.6 million registered Holstein cows and 150,000 red Holstein cows. We've got the biggest registered Holstein population in the world. We've got also the biggest red Holstein population in the world, and for the other dual-purpose breeds, we've got the biggest flag fee and the biggest brown Swiss registered population in the world. So as you can see, German dairy industry is not or is quite big. So, and another thing, we've got different, in Germany, we've got different areas, different environmental and climatic conditions. So our breeding targets that the cows will work in every different barn. Doesn't matter if it's on a small farm with 10 cows or a big farm with 1,000 cows. We've got a lot of different systems here in Germany. So that's why we are able always to find the right match for your herd. That's just quick from me and about GGI-SPERMEX. Thank you for your attention. And with that, I give back to you, Vasim. Thank you.
An insight into the GGI-SPERMEX and the overall breeding philosophy. I would now like to invite Dr. Stefan Wenzing from the VIT, the official data center of the Germany that collects and maintains the data for the production and all the bulls evaluation, etc. Dr. Stefan will introduce himself as well as the VIT, and then he will lead us through the German breeding values and how they are differently calculated than the US system. And the reason we wanted to organize this session was we in Pakistan, the dairy farmers and the dairy industry are quite used to of understanding and interpreting the bull catalogs based on the American genetic proofs. But the German genetic proofs are a little different, how they are calculated, what factors are there, and how it is different. That is something we wanted that farmers should know so that they can take an informed decision when they have the choices available to them. So Dr. Stephen, over to you. Please share your screen and continue. Thank you.
Hello, everybody there in Pakistan. Nice to see you via Zoom. So in times of Corona, everybody is the same wherever we are sitting because everybody is sitting in his own home office. And yeah, but also I think Corona also has learned us some new techniques, like everybody is familiar now with this kind of video conferences, and it offers also some opportunities. But I hope to see you someday either in Pakistan or in Germany. So you are welcome to come here, and maybe one day I can visit also Pakistan. So my name is Stefan Wenzing. As you can see, I'm already quite an old guy, so I'm 62 years old. Maybe most important, I'm a dairy farmer's son, like Nicholas. So I grew up on a family farm in the west of Germany with Holstein cows. So the farm today is still running by my younger brother. 65 Holstein cows, very normal system, intensive system, something between 10 and 11,000 kilograms of milk. But maybe what is more important, because people always ask how much milk do your cows give, but for my brother, much more important is his cows have a total lifetime production of almost 50,000 kilograms, and there is a profit in. It's not just only the milk production, but it's also the longevity and the functionality of the cows. So for my brother, the most important figure is how many kilograms of milk have his culled cows given, and he is almost at 50,000, and there he's far above the average. Yeah, so when I grew up, so I studied, of course, animal science in Göttingen in Germany, did my PhD on fertility of sheep, so not very familiar with Holstein that time. But later on, I worked for 15 years. Oh, first I should say, I then went for 2 years to Africa, to Ethiopia, to work as a volunteer. Also there on an Ambo agricultural high school as a teacher. And then I worked for 15 years in the dairy industry, with different positions in herd book and AI organizations in Germany, before I took my today's job at the Data Evaluation Center in Verden, where I now work already since 21 years. So that's in a brief words, what is my career and background. But still, I think for me, the most important thing is still knowing what a cow is and what milk production is all about, coming once every 2 or 3 weeks to the farm of my brother, to my family farm. So yeah, so let's now try to share my screen so that we can go on with the Okay. Do you see the screen? Can anybody give me feedback?
Yeah. No, this is okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So the topic of today is Holstein breeding values, comparing the German and the US system. And we learned already from the speakers, from the other speakers, that the Pakistan industry is very familiar with the American scale. So I want to introduce you some more to the German scale and comparing these scales. And maybe also you can learn a little bit more also on the background of the US system. When you see our logo and on the color VIT, so translated in English, it's IT Solutions for Animal Production. So we are a data center providing mainly services for processing data in animal husbandry, with dairy being the main section. And VIT is already existing since more than 50 years. So, and one of the most important departments we have also, beside identification, registration, milk recording, herd book, data processing, all these things, is also, of course, genetic evaluation. And we do genetic evaluation not only for dairy breeds, the breeds were already mentioned by Nicholas. We do it not only for dairy breeds, but also we do it for beef breeds. We do it also for horses, for pigs, and even we have just started now doing genetic evaluation for some traits for dogs and some traits for bees. So you see, we are a little bit more than just genetic evaluation center for dairy breeds, but today we are focusing on Holstein. And you can say, when you are so familiar with the US system, that VIT is a CDCB of Germany. So we are the official genetic evaluation center, and it is very important. We are independent. So at the end, what we do, that we keep our neutral position, is controlled by the government. But you should also know that in Germany, for genetic evaluation, officially, the breed organizations are responsible. And you saw from the map with Nicholas that we have many regional breed organizations in Germany, but at the end, everybody has given this as a service to VIT. So we are doing the central genetic evaluation for Holsteins or for the dairy breeds in Germany. So this is about the company, I think, and it was mentioned already, of course, US is one of the leading Holstein countries or nations in the world. And here are really the hard figures to compare. Where is Germany standing in terms of Holstein compared to US? And first of all, when we look at the total live Holstein cows, then it is around 8 million in US, and it's around 2.5 million in Germany. So the overall population of milk cows is much bigger in US. But when we talk about breeding and genetic information, then it's not important how many cows you milk, because the second biggest Holstein population milked in the world is Mexico. But they don't play any role in breeding, because they don't have the data and the structure for this. So what is very important is, when we're talking about breeding and genetic evaluation, is the number of milked cows that contribute data, hard data. And that is the number of milk recorded cows, because there the data, the majority of the data comes from. And if we compare the number of the Holstein cows under DHI, so Dairy Herd Improvement System, so milk recording, it is 2.23 million in Germany and is 2.3 million in the US. You see, we have quite a very similar size of Holstein cows that deliver data, because they are in the milk recording. And then it was mentioned already by Nicholas, when it comes to herd book registration, then you see that almost 80% of the German cows under milk recording are also herd book registered. Whereas in the US, the percentage is much less. So that is why, in terms of herd book registered cows, Germany is even bigger than US. But I think when we also talk about the breeding power, it's not only about the cows, it's very important, but it's also, I think, for me, one of the best figures to show the breeding power of the different populations, if we compare the number of test bulls, because this is a combination of your system, your size of the cow population, and also your capability to to have this data systematic used. And this is the number of test bulls you could test in your population before the genomic area started. And that it was Germany 915 Holstein test bulls in that time, 2000 up to 2009 per year, whereas US was 1,150. So overall, you can see that, and maybe that's new for some of you, that the German and the US populations are really very similar in size and in structure, and that they are really the leading in the world. Because if you look what are then coming next behind US and Germany, so there's with really a big distance follows France with 1.4 million Holstein cows under milk recording, and next comes then Italy with 1.1 million Holstein cows. But you see this is remarkable less than in Germany and US that have a very comparable size. Okay. So, but it's about genetic evaluation. So, how there is very big differences in how these two countries or systems, US and Germany, express genetic level of animals. So, and there's two philosophies behind that. Let's first have a look at Germany, and it's not just Germany; it's Germany and almost all the breeding Holstein breeding countries in the world, including, for instance, also Canada and all the European countries. So what we express is we express the genetic level of an animal as an estimated breeding value, EBV. And what does it mean? It is the genetic level. So we try to estimate the genetic level of the animal itself. So the expected differences in phenotype due to the genetic level of animal. So it's referring to cows because the cows are the animals that can themselves express their genetic level. Whereas a bull, we know a bull has a genetic level for milk production traits, but he is not milked himself. So he cannot show his own genetic potential directly. So only cows can show their own genetic level directly because they are showing the traits we are interested in. And then there is the philosophy that the US uses, and it's the only main country that it's chosen for predicted transmission ability, because what the American people, what they on American scale is published are not EBV, but it is PTAs, so predicted transmission ability. And what is that? That is, it is not the genetic level of the animals in himself or itself. It is the genetic level that can be transferred to the next generation. So it is the expected differences in phenotype of offspring of this animal. And this is also for cows and for bulls, they are expressing PTAs. So what is then the difference between EBV and PTA? It's quite simple mathematical formula because every animal transfers only half of his genetic set to the offspring. The PTA is 50% of an EBV. So you can easily convert PTAs into EBV or vice versa in either dividing by 2 or multiplicating by 2. But one has to know the differences. So PTA and EBV is a different philosophy. I don't say that there is arguments for both of that. I don't say one or the other is better. One simply has to know. And most countries in the world, or almost all the breeding countries in the world have chosen for an EBV system because it starts from the animal from its own genetic level itself, whereas US, by historic reason, has chosen for PTAs. Okay, let's go to the first to the milk production traits and the scale for milk production traits, because there's another difference in scale or philosophy. EBV and PTA for amount of milk, and I really say amount of milk because you see it in the next lines, for milk, fat, and protein are expressed in Germany or in whole Europe. We have the matrix system as kilograms, whereas in US they use the pounds as to express the amount of milk, fat, and protein. So once again, one has to know a conversion factor, and that is the factor to convert kilogram into pounds. You can Google it simply. It is 1 kilogram is 2.2046 pounds. So that also one has to know. And why is that so important? Because I find when I discuss with people all around the world, there's very often confusion about that. Because what does it mean? The the PTA is only half of the EBV, but on the other hand, pounds is almost double as kilograms. And therefore, it seems sometimes that the scale for milk, when you simply look at the figures for for genetic level for milk for a bull on US scale and in Germany or in Europe, then it seems that the scale is the same. You find some top bulls above 2,000, figures of 2,000, and some people think that the scale is directly comparable, but this is not, because 2,000 kilograms is not comparable to 2,000 lips PTA. So 2,000 kilogram EBV equals 2,200 lips PTA. So the scale is a little bit wider for PTA compared to EBV, because once again here, if you look at the formula, first of all, we have to divide the EBV by 2 to get on the PTA level. And then once again, we multiply it once again with 2.2 to get it from kilograms to lips transferred. But so for milk amount, people think that the scales are comparable directly, the figures on American base and then a European base or German base. But when it comes to the fat and protein percentage that are also milk production traits, then you see, because percent is percent, there is not lips and kilograms, percent is percent in US and in Germany. And that means that the EBVs, for instance, plus 0.10% fat or protein EBV equals only half of that as PTA, because you remember the simple formula. We have to divide by 2, it is what is transferable. So that means even though the scales for the amount of milk look the same, they are different. And for fat and protein, we have the standard formula that PTA is half of that of EBV, and therefore also the spreading is half of that on the scale. So already a lot of confusion, but simply one has to know, mathematically, statistically, it is easy to convert that, but people are very often not aware of that. Okay, and then let's go for the scale for the functional traits, because there is different scale, also different philosophies. So in Germany and in most other European countries, we express all the many other traits summarized as the functional traits, so the non-production traits. We express them on the same scale, on a neutral scale, a relative scale, with an average of 100 and a standard deviation of 12. One simply has to know. So an average bull has for all the functional traits 100, and then the standard deviation is 12. And using a neutral scale, a relative scale, has advantages, but also has disadvantages. So what is an advantage is, because we have this many different traits, if you use a relative scale, the figures are directly comparable across traits because we have the same scale. So you don't need to know any details about the trait scale itself, what is the spreading, things like that. But the disadvantage is, from a practical point of view for farmers, they don't really directly have any access to a relative scale. So they always try to convert that to the phenotypic scale they are used to on their daily farm management. And when we go to the US, these US traits are expressed on a pseudo phenotypic scale. I'll come in a moment why I call it a pseudo phenotypic scale. So the PTR values are the disadvantage of this phenotypic scales is that the PTA values are not comparable across traits, because percentage is something different, like months, or even percentage of carving, difficult carving, or percentage of protein is both percentage, but it's a completely different scale. But it is easier to interpret within trait. And now the explanation why I call it the pseudo phenotypic scale, because phenotypic scales of most traits are skewed or not normal distributed. And that means that if you use a phenotypic scale, this scale is really only a real phenotypic scale around the average, because as more as you go to the extremes, no matter to the positive or the negative extreme, this is not anymore normal distributed, and the PTA not really represents the same figure, represents the same difference in expected phenotype. So at the end, for me, it is just there is there is different, there's different philosophies or different systems behind that, and both has advantage and disadvantage. But what we should be aware of is that we all think, and we are all quite sure that if we look at the, because we are looking at biological traits, we expect a normal distribution. So most of the animals are around the average, and as more as you go to the extremes, left or right, so negative or positive, as more as you go to the extremes, there's less percentage of animals you find there. And more or less it is like this, that plus minus 1 standard deviation, there's 2/3 of all the animals. And if you look at +3 standard deviation, so the really extreme end, then we're talking about 0.5% of all the animals. And that is the underlying distribution, should be the same for all the traits. So what Ebv Pta difference to phenotypic differences? Because I think that is the most, why it is not working? Yeah, there it comes. So sometimes internet stucks also a little bit. So the breeding values, or to be more precise, the differences in breeding values should give a realistic estimate of the expected average phenotypic differences, because that is what the end, what we are all interested in, especially the farmers are interested in. What can I make? What can that make for a phenotypic difference, for an extra production, for an extra longevity, for an extra healthy animal, if I use the better or the lower end of the bulls? And the range of the estimated realistic breeding values depends on, and the realistic breeding values are BLUP breeding values, and breeding values of the in the leading countries always should fulfill the BLUP conditions. So the range of the estimated breeding values depends on several things. The first is the true genetic variation in the population. And the true genetic variation in the population, in the Holstein population, in the main countries, should be very similar. So also between US and Germany, because we have since more than 50 years this very intensive exchange. So the leading sire of sons are used all over the world in the main countries, like also in US and Germany. And therefore, I think we can estimate that the true genetic variation within the population is very similar in US and German Holsteins. And then the second aspect is the quality of the genetic evaluation procedures. So when I'm talking with my colleagues from the evaluation centers in US or in other countries, of course, we're discussing a lot about the differences we have, but it's a technical aspect. So overall, I think we can really state that the quality of the US and the German genetic evaluation system is really a standard, golden standard, because these two by far biggest populations, they have the financial and the organizational power really to develop and to run the best possible genetic systems. There is some differences between US and Germany, but at the end, I think it's not really any difference that makes any difference in the practical breeding. And then there's a third point, and that is the quantity and quality of data. And there are some more differences, significant difference between US and Germany, and I'll try to also figure this out a little bit more. So, and all the figures that I use in the following slides, so this is not just figures I dream about, but these are the figures that I've used. This come from mainly from the big official document that is the reference for the net merit calculation in US of CTCB. You find the link here, and the figures that I use for the German side you can also find on our homepage. It's the homepage is also completely in English, so you can find. And I hope so. This in the introduction we had the question. So when you go to fit.de to our homepage, you can find, I think, the complete description of the breeding values of the system. It's also in completely in English. Also, these documents you can find it there, hopefully. So that is what the farmers are interested in. What phenotypic difference do the EBV and PTA differences really mean? And taking these figures, I think the expected phenotypic difference of animals, cows, with an average values +1 standard deviation genetic level. And I'm referring always to one genetic standard deviation because then we have a comparison scale of US and Germany, because we think that really the distribution is the same in these two populations. And then how did we derive these figures for the standard deviation? So for Germany, I can tell you exactly, because what we did is not a theoretical standard deviation, but what we really did is we looked at the daughter-proven bulls. So we separated the daughter-proven bulls in the top 25 and the bottom 25% of all the bulls. And then we looked really at the realized daughter phenotype differences between these bulls. So what I'm referring to here as a one standard deviation is really the realized standard deviation on the daughter level of high and low daughter-proven bulls on the German scale. And what the US does, I don't have this detailed information how they calculate it really, but it is very similar what USDA in the calculation of net merit dollars also use for standard deviation. But what sometimes is a little bit astonishing that USDA or CDCB with calculating net merit is working with a little bit different standard deviations than the Holstein Association with TPI. Okay. So, and once again, so what we are talking about is the difference, what makes the difference of one genetic standard deviation. And that is, for instance, look here, between an average animal or an average bull and a bull that belongs to the best, when you go this to the calculate this together, belongs to the best 16.5% of the animals. So that is what it's all about. So then looking at the standard deviation of the milk production traits, then of course the data in Germany and US are achieved by true measurements, because milk production you can really measure, what is sometimes difficult with some of the functional traits. And we all adopt US and Germany and all the other main countries. We follow the ICA recommendations how to calculate, how to do milk recording, and how, for instance, how to calculate the 24-hour yield of a cow. That is the base of genetic evaluation. So, but there are also some differences, and this is differences in data quality and density. For instance, one difference between US and Germany is that in Germany, the farmers are only offered milk recording systems with a 4 weeks maximum of 4 weeks difference between the testing of the cows. Whereas in US, there's a remarkable percentage of the farmers that test their cows only every 6 or every 8 weeks to save some cost. So overall, we can say that the frequency and therefore the amount of data per cow per lactation is a little bit better in Germany, but I say really a little bit better. It's not really a significant differences, but there are some. So, but also this is one reason to have differences in spreading and predictability of the milk production traits. And then this is when we compare directly what is one genetic standard deviation on US base and on German base. And I will show you some more of this kind of small tables, and it is always 3 columns. And the first column is the original standard deviation that is used for net merit calculation. So it's a PTA, and it's a PTA when we talk about milk fat protein, it's a PTA in pounds. So we have to transfer that to make it comparable to Germany. And yeah, now, of course, I'm a German guy, so I choose the German kilogram EBV as a reference. So we have, first of all, to multiply this by 2 to make it an EBV, and then to divide it once again by 2.2046 to get it on the EBV kilogram scale. And then this second and third column, now we can compare the genetic standard deviation, and the genetic standard deviation on the German scale equals, for instance, 690 kilograms, comparing to 514 on the US scale. For fat, there's hardly any difference, really difference. And for protein, there's once again a little bit more spreading in on the German scale. So in Germany, we find a higher standard deviation compared to the US. That means that the EBVs represent a little more difference in the phenotype, in the expected phenotypic differences in the daughters compared to the US EBV. Looking at maybe the second most important, we'll see this later on, trait from the functional traits, it is productive life, because it's one of the main figures that contributes to profitability of dairying. In all countries, including US and Germany, in genetic evaluation, we are not using productive life, let's say in days or months, in our genetic evaluation. And why are we not doing that? Because if we would use the productive life, the real productive life as a trait in genetic evaluation, that it would mean we had to wait until the last daughter of a bull is killed before we can calculate really proper, unbiased his EBV for productive life. And no, that would mean we would only have productive life for old, very old inactive bulls. And therefore, all the different systems, including US and Germany, we are using a different trait definition. So for instance, in Germany, we use how many percentage of the bulls, of the daughters of a bull survive for the second calving, for the third calving. The trait definition in the US system is a little bit different, but also at the end, you always try to estimate the productive life already for bulls that still have a lot of daughters alive, so still records in progress. But nevertheless, there are also differences in the data quality, because and one very important thing in Germany is that since more than 30 years, we have the culling reasons available for all cows under milk recording. And why is that important? Because if you have the culling reasons, then you can do a proper separation of animals sold for breeding purpose or those that were really culled. Because an animal that is sold for breeding purpose, for instance, exported or sold to a farm that is not participating in milk recording, then the data when the cow disappeared from your data set is not the end of the life of this animal. So it's still a censored data. So it makes quite a difference in the quality of genetic evaluation if you can properly separate the sold animals from the really culled animals. And also this is one reason when we look at the genetic standard deviation for longevity. So in US expressed as productive life, our breeding value is the RZN, the relative breeding value for longevity. And you once again see that transferred to EBV, now it's just simply ×2. Then on the US scale, on the time scale in months, one genetic standard deviation is 3.4 months in productive life. Whereas when you look at the standard deviation in Germany, it is 8.5 months. That means the differences between a high and an average bull on the German RZN represents a much higher difference in daughter productive life compared to the US EBV. I don't have really a true explanation why it is so, but we have tested it several times. And currently we are in a project of comparing European breeding values because we are doing closer cooperations within the Eurogenomics countries. And there once again also we saw that even within Europe that the German system is best in predicting this differences in true productive life of the daughter. So when you select for a high bull for German breeding value for productive life, you can expect a much higher difference in true productive life compared to US and also some other countries. And I think one of the main reasons is we have a so good data structure to separate this culling, to having really the culling culled animals separated from the only sold animals. Going to the calving traits, and I need more than one slide here. So what is the same in US and Germany? Both of us, we have two traits. We have the calving ease. So this is a subjective score of ease of calving, mainly on a 4 classes scale from easy carving, average carving, difficult carving, and then very difficult carving or surgery or cesarean, whatever you call it. And then the second trait is a more objective trait, and this is a stillbirth rate, just a 0-1. So a calf has born alive or was dead during the first 48 hours. Besides these two traits, also we have two EBVs for each trait, and that is as well the direct or the sire effect. That is the effect of the bull on the size of the calf, to reduce it to just one sentence. And the second one is the maternal and or daughter effect. And that means, I think this is important to understand, most of the people are looking only to the direct effect. So because they want, when they mate for the heifer especially, they want to know which heifer gives small calves, so no problems with calving. But you must be aware that on the long run, the maternal or daughter calving ease is the more important effect, because this accumulates, and the daughter or the female, the cow, the mother, she always has a double effect on the ease of birth, because also she has a direct effect, that she has also a genetic effect on the size of the calf, but also the dam or the mother has another effect, because she is giving birth to the calf. So she has this rump that is good or not so good for easy calving, or she has this ability to widen the rump and all the ligaments for the birth. And therefore, the maternal calving ease is on the long run more important than the direct calving ease. But I know that most of the people are looking for the direct calving ease. But nevertheless, all these 4 EBVs at the end, so maternal and direct for calving ease and maternal and direct for stillbirth, is available in US and in Germany, so there is no difference in that. But there is a difference in data quantity and quality. In Germany, because of the established system and the rules and regulations, calving ease and stillbirth rate is available for all newborn calves, because calving ease has to be reported within 3 days together with a mandatory identification and registration system. So in Germany, it is in whole Europe, every farmer that has any cattle has to really register and identify this newborn calf within 3 days after calving. And with that, also in Germany, with that system, then they also have to give the calving ease of this newborn calf. And therefore, we have very, very complete data for all the newborn calves on calving ease. Whereas in the US, there is not this mandatory system. So there's only a part of farms that deliver calving ease figures via the milk recording system and stillbirth data. And I don't know exactly what, but at least only maximum 50% of all born calves in the US system, there is calving ease data available. So the quantity and the quantity is much bigger what we have behind the calving ease figures in Germany. And it's not only the quantity, but I think it's also very important. If this calving ease figures is only given every 4 or 6 weeks with a milk recording, it has gone for many calves a long time. Whereas when the farmer reports the calving ease within 3 days, he still knows really what the calving ease was. And then there's one special thing in US. The calving ease breeding values are the only trait group where the genetic level is expressed as an absolute value and not as a percentage from deviation from a base, because all the other traits in US and also all the other countries in the world, they always express genetic level as a deviation from the base. And there's only one exception, and that is the calving ease traits on US base. Don't ask me why. Maybe you ask the Americans why they do it. And they have made a major revision in August 2020, because the base where they express these calving traits on has dramatically changed. And this is shown here is from the American documents, some screenshots from the original figures. And you see here in this figure, in this graph, the yellow graph, that is the distribution of the percentage difficult births in heifers they had before. So the breeding values were expressed on with an average of about 8% of difficult calvings. Maybe you are familiar to that. And then there was bulls from 4% that were the easy calving bulls up to 12% that were, of course, the bulls that you only should use on cows. But now the new base in US is, they say, they now express it on a base of 2 or 2.5% of difficult calvings only. So nowadays, almost all the bulls have 2 or 3% of difficult calvings, so are relatively the same. So the American breeding values hardly express any more differences between the bulls. And in this document, they have changed it in August. It is not given what is the new standard deviation, but also Interbull is calculating standard deviation. It's the sire variance, but it is very similar to the standard deviation. And Interbull has calculated that the US breeding values for calving ease have now only a standard deviation of PTA 0.13 to 15, and that means on the EBV base 0.26 to 0.3% of difficult calving, and that means there is hardly any difference anymore in the bulls on US scale. So it's very hard to detect, really, except the very few extremes, to detect the better and the worse bulls for easy calving on the US base. In Germany, it's different. From our data we get from the farmers, the very complete data, maximum 3 days after birth. We still get the farmers report with us 5% of difficult calvings in first lactation. In the higher lactations, it's about 3%. And the standard deviation of our breeding values represent about 2% of differences in difficult calvings. So it is almost, if you compare to the figures I showed above there, so the spreading and the differentiation of the bulls is almost 5 times as much as on US base. So that is really something when you look even, and this is the original figure from US, I don't know how you really want to select for easy calving bulls on this new US scale they used since August last year. So coming to the health traits, in US CDCB, so the official data evaluation center, evaluates, of course, mastitis. They evaluate 3 metabolic disorders: ketosis, displaced abomasum, milk fever, 2 fertility disorders, metritis, and retained placenta. In Germany, we have also mastitis, of course. We have also the same 3 metabolic disorders. It's ketosis, displaced abomasum, milk fever. We have 3 fertility orders. So beside the Americans that they have metritis and retained placenta, we have also ovarian cysts as a separated trait. And then we have some more traits. We have hoof health traits, 6 hoof health traits, and we have 4 culling reasons, because I mentioned already that we have the culling reasons for all the cows. So we have a genetic evaluation on mastitis as a culling reason, metabolic disease as a culling reason, feet and leg problems, and infertility. So there are differences in data quantity and quality. In Germany, our data for the health traits come from a standardized recording on selected farms that follow the standards of ICAR of about 800 herds. There's 800 bigger herds. And also they do at the same time herd genotyping, and they are across the countries. And the culling reasons we have for all the cows. In the US, there is not such a system. So the US use the health events that are coming from the individual herd management data. And that means that is a big range of how the farmers record and what traits they record. I think with mastitis, it is still very comparable what farmers record in US and what they record in Germany. And both also, we are talking about 30% of incidence rates for mastitis per lactation. That means it's quite similar in Germany and US, that we calculate that an average cow gets once in her lifetime across 3 lactations 1 mastitis. But when it comes to all the other health traits, then it is really that the data structure in US is very ununiform, because every farm records different, in a different way, different traits or number of traits. And so the US database for this direct health traits is very diverse. That creates also some problems in genetic calculation. And then when you look here at the figures, like you see from the other traits, for mastitis, based on a quite similar population average of 30% incidence rates for mastitis per lactation, then we are talking about standard deviation of 5% on the US base, whereas we have 12% on the German base. So also it's similar to what we saw for longevity, that the differences in the breeding values between high and low bulls in Germany represent more phenotypic difference on the daughter level. Because time is running, I don't want to spend too much time. Here you see the metabolic diseases and the reproduction disorders, and roughly you can say also there is the spreading of the genetic standard deviation in Germany is for many traits doubled. Where it is more similar, it is for ketosis. And the reason is there because that is not based only on farmers recording, but it's also based on figures coming from the milk laboratory for the beta-hydroxy butyrate percentage. So it's more objective figures over there, and that makes it more similar between Germany and US. Okay, and then there's a hoof health traits. You see here only the 6 hoof health traits from Mortellaro or Dermatitis digitalis, or I think on US base, I don't know what the name is in Pakistan used, hairy warts sometimes it's also called, but it's Dermatitis digitalis. Of course, sole ulcer, digital phlegmona, white line separation or disease, laminitis, and finally, maybe not so important, chylome. These are the reasons. And where do we get the data from in Germany? And that is very important. We get the data from the hoof trimmer, so from routine hoof trimming. So it's not only the few treated cows that we have, but so we have also all the data from the hoof trimmers, or unluckily not from all the hoof trimmers, but we get from a remarkable number of hoof trimmers, we get this data. Whereas in US, CDC Bill is still working on a pipeline to get data from hoof trimmers. And there is already a kind of hoof disease evaluation, but it's a private one. It is from Zoetis. They work on lameness, but lameness is just a 0-1 trait, and they don't publish too much what is the quality of the data and what is their standard deviation is not available. So the 6 ICAR-defined hoof health traits where we have data in Germany represent significant differences in daughter incidence rates. So when we summarize what I told you on the quality of trait breeding value, so single trait breeding value, then US and Germany are the leading Holstein populations that have a similar size of milk recorded cows that deliver data. Because the size of the population, both countries have the financial power to develop and use the leading genetic evaluation systems. Even there are some differences, both are setting the golden standards. The existing quality difference of the estimated breeding values depend mainly on the quantity and quality of the data in the functional traits. And we, especially in Germany, we have a better structure for central gathering of data for functional traits. And maybe also to give you some idea, what is the background? Why is in Germany we have this much better structured data pipelines? And this is because in US, by tradition, the whole farming and dairy farming, and also then genetic evaluation, milk recording, is a private business. So if you want to do it, you do it. If you don't want to do it, you do it not. And if you do it, the industry somehow has to pay the bill. Whereas in Europe, and a main reason is that the history of 2 world wars. In Europe, there were times, especially in the Second World War and after the Second World War, where there was a lot of problems and hunger, and so the government, they interfered much more in this private business of producing foodstuff and also producing milk compared to the US. And from these times where the government interfered much more in this sector. We got these structures of that all the data has to be delivered for central database and also for genetic evaluation. So from the point of view of a private farmer in Germany, he may not like that he has to deliver all this data and it is controlled. But from the point of view of a genetic evaluation, this is of course fantastic because we get all this data in a good and standardized way. So milk production and conformation EBV for AI boats predict comparable phenotypic differences. There is some difference, but it's not really significant, I would say. No? But when you talk about milk production figures for correct interpretation and comparing different systems, PTA, EBV, scales, kilogram and lips, it is very important to take this into account and to have the knowledge about that. But for functional traits, and they make 50% of the costs and the breeding goal, the DOI EBDV predicts significant more difference in daughter performance compared to the US PTA. But of course, you have to know the scale, the relative scale with an average of 100 and the standard deviation of 12. So, and at the end, I want to have a short look with you on the comparison of the total merit indices, because that is where the farmers all over the world pre-select their bulls on, and in what list, for what ranking list you start to look for your individual bull. And there we have, in both countries, in Germany and US, we have 2 total merit indices. In US, it was mentioned already, we have net merit dollar and TPI. And in Germany, we have AZ Euro and AZG. And AZ Euro and net merit is comparable, and AZG and TPI is comparable. And I show you why. So when we first look at AZ Euro and net merit dollar, they have the same principle of calculation, and they are based on economics of dairying. So the phenotype differences based on genetic difference are multiplied with the margin per trait unit. And under this ceteris paribus condition, that means you keep all the other traits constant. So you also do not double counting any effects. And both AZ Euro and net merit dollar are the sum of the individual breeding values, deviations from the base, times the margin for all the included traits. And therefore, the difference of this is only the scale. The AZ Euro, it is euros difference on animal level, so EBV level, Euro EBV. And net merit, it is US dollar difference on daughter offspring level, because it's a PTAs, based on PTAs. So, but you can convert them. So net merit dollar times 2, that is, then you are on the EBV level on instead of PTA. And then times 0.9. Why 0.9? Because the conversion rate of euros to dollar is on the long term 1 to 1.1. So then you can compare it. So it means when we look at $800 net merit, it would equal 1,400 euros EBV when you would express this on the EBV scale and in euros instead of in dollars. So, and then AZG and TPI, we cannot convert these scales because the AZG is simply a relative scale with average 100 and a standard deviation of 12. And the TPI, it is a numeric scale based on a historic population. So this absolute figures, I don't know, 2,700 TPI, doesn't tell you anything in dollars or in kilograms or something like that, because it's simply a numeric scale based on a historic population. Yeah. Net merit and AZ Euro. Let's have a look on where is the top of the list. And I have not chosen for the #1 bull because the #1 bull can exceed by far the other bulls. For currently, we have the situation that with Carl in US, there is a bull that is more than 1 standard deviation ahead of all the other daughter-proven bulls. And in Germany, we have the same. We have the #1 bull is 1 genetic standard deviation above the #2 bull. So I have chosen always for the #5 bull on the list because that is not so much dependent on this individual bull. And this is in net merit dollar, and I got this figures, of course, from uscdcb.com. The daughter-proven bull, the #5 bull is Burley with almost $800 net merit, and the genomic bulls is Hercules with $950, and the standard deviation of a net merit is 197, so just below 200. And that means we are talking for Burley with a bull with +4 standard deviations. And the other euro, just to get a feeling for the scale, of course, you find the official top lists on our homepage. The daughter-proven number 5 bull is Kent with +1,949 euros EBV, AZ euro, and the genomic bull is Star P with 2,730, and the standard deviation of an AZ euro is about 535 euros. So these are different scales, but when we convert, and now I have chosen the US base for dollar net merit as a reference, if I convert this 1,949 euros EBV to a PTA and into dollars, then it would mean it is $1,083 PTA, the number 5 bull, compared to $800 on the US scale. And then you see, once again, what we, of course, it must be like that if all the single traits represent a little bit more phenotypic spreading on the German system than the US system, then you find it also back in the total merit index. So if you select a +3 standard deviation bull on the base of German breeding values, you get more differences in the daughter expected daughter phenotypes than on US base. And here, once again, it is the comparison of the relative weights within AZ euro and net merit dollar. And you see both is based on an economic calculation with the same method. So milk production traits in both is below 50%, and this is what we stated already in the beginning. The functional traits make more than 50% of the breeding goal and the cost of dairying. So the functional traits are at least as same important as the milk production traits, and that is all over the world. It's also in Pakistan like that. And you see here the differences. So when we look at the two graphs here, what is the main differences where we look on, and then we can see is this kind of orange bar, and this is the health traits. The health traits, including the mastitis, that has much higher impact on in the AZ euro than it has in the net merit dollar. And the reason is simply because we have the better data, and I have shown to you that we have more health traits, and the health traits represent more phenotypic difference on the scale. And this is the reason why the health traits in the net merit dollar account only for 2.3% if you take mastitis and the other health traits together, whereas they account for almost 18% in the AZ euro. And then there's another difference. You see the red bar here, the red bar in net merit dollar, and the red bar is for conformation. So conformation is included in net merit, and this despite the fact that there is no economic calculation in net merit. So if you look also into the document for net merit dollar, they simply include for 10%, and they explain what it means with which subtraits they include, but they don't give any economic reason for that. And that is a different philosophy of AZ euro compared to net merit dollar. The AZ euro really refers 100% for economic impact. And it is, I know that conformation traits are important for many dairy farmers around the world, and I guess also for Pakistan. But be aware that you are not show breeders. So it means that having a nice cow or a less nice cow in your herd, having the same longevity, the same milk, the same health, then it doesn't make any economic differences. So there is not any direct impact of conformation. And conformation is always only working indirectly. It's working a good feet and legs, works through a better longevity, a better daughter fertility, things like that. But daughter fertility and longevity are included already directly. So there is not a direct need for once again count for conformation. But that one simply has to know that this is a difference. So AZ euro is a really pure economic breeding value representing really economic differences. whereas the net merit also, when it comes to confirmation, it follows with all the traits this economic calculation, but when it comes to confirmation, it is simply set by political reasons to 10%. Then finally, at the end, the AZG and TPI comparison. And once again, I have taken the number 5 bulls to show where is the top of the list. Then the number 5 daughter-proven bull for AZG is Jameson with 145. So it's a scale of 100 and a standard deviation of 12. So we are talking a +4 standard deviation or 3.5 standard deviation bull. And the genomic bull is Gladius with 165. And if we compare that to TPI, then if you go to, this is from Holstein.com, so the Holstein Association homepage, they publish the official top list for TPI. Then the number 5 bull daughter proven is IoT Helix with 2,845 TPI. The number 5 bull, genomic bulls, is not so easy to find because there's not an official top list of active bulls. So I have chosen the number 5 bull that is at least 10 months old and has an NAAB code. So he has a Siemens code. And what is important to know that the base of TPI is not 0, but the base for TPI is 2,363. And the standard deviation is given as around 200, but the figures tell me that the standard deviation should be a little bit less. But officially, the standard deviation for TPI is 200. And you can see this, especially what I mean when we look at the base. Why is the base 2,363? When you look into the formula of TPI, you can find it on Holstein.com. The formula of TPI, look here at the right end, there's something like plus 2,363. So you calculate the TPI from an individual bull by multiplying all the PTAs that are expressed from a base difference, divided by the genetic standard deviation, and then you add 2,363. So the base for an average bull, a bull that has all the breeding values plus minus 0, then the bull gets 2,363 TPI. So when we compare the relative weights, then you see once again, both AZG and TPI have less than 40% for production traits. And what we see is also that both include now also the AZG, because it's a political decided total merit index. It includes confirmation, and also, of course, TPI includes confirmation more, 25%. And of course, it's a kind of philosophy. And what I would like you to be aware of is that who calculates and ranks bulls on TPI? It is the Holstein Association. It's not CDCB. And Holstein Association is only representing 1 million cows out of 8 million milk cows on the US base. So it's only the 25% registered Holsteins that they are representing. So the herd book breeders. And these herd book breeders have a little bit different goal than the commercial dairy farmer. They want also to earn some money by selling pedigree cattle, and therefore they, from my point of view, that is the reason why they put so much emphasis on confirmation. But everybody should be aware and ask himself, am I a show and pedigree breeder, or am I in first instance a commercial dairy farmer that needs to earn his money from the daily milk production? And therefore, I think one should understand why TPI has such a high weight on confirmation traits. And I guess, and that is then not anymore very neutral, I think from my speech, especially during the last 10 minutes, I think you have already learned that my preference is not on TPI and not on AZG, because I think, first of all, we are all commercial dairy farmers and we should follow a commercial breeding goal. So my preference is very clearly net merit dollar and AZ euro. So if you want to pre-select your bulls and find the right bull for your individual cow or herd, start with the net merit list, not with the TPI list, or start with the AZ euro list and not with the AZG list. But that is, of course, I stated that is a personal statement from me, but I think I have good arguments for that. So in summary, the goal of breeding selection for majority of dairy farms around the world is improvement of profitability by selecting genetically superior animals bulls. The base for selection are breeding values, EBV or PTA, and the predictability of differences in daughter phenotype by differences of EBV or PTA. That is crucial. That is what we are going for. Because a breeding value that doesn't represent really any true differences on the daughter level doesn't help you. And the differences in DOI EBV for eye bulls correspond to a bigger daughter difference compared to the US PTA, especially for the functional traits. And then the overall, the expected overall additional profit is expressed in euro-dollar with AZ-Euro and net merit dollar, and this is why I go for that. And selection for AZ-Euro gives significant higher economic response compared to net merit dollar. For instance, selecting a +3 standard deviation bull compared to a +2 standard deviation bull, so very good bulls, that is where we are looking for. Then it gives you an extra profit of $197 when you do that on not merit dollar. And if you do it on AZ-Euro, it gives you an extra profit of $268 extra profit for every daughter. So I think there is good reasons. I would never say select only on the German base or only German bulls. That would be nonsense, because then you neglect one of the two biggest populations in the world. But there is a lot of opportunities in the German system as well as in the German bulls, because we have good data and we have a good population and we have a good evaluation system. So thank you for your attention, and hope there is some also some discussions.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Stephen. I think it was very useful presentation that you have made, and we have got some questions. And I think we have some question already in the chat. So what I can do is to start with that, and then I can also invite the participants to ask the questions directly. We have with us Dr. Moinuddin from the University of Arid Agriculture, Rawalpindi. He has got some questions. So Moin sir, if you are there, I invite you to ask the questions directly, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. Number one, in your TMI, which you are using in Germany, are you not compromising the longevity on the by giving net score to the daughter fertility trait? Because both of these traits, they are very important for the longevity of the animal in the herd. So if you are giving more weight to the longevity as compared to daughter fertility trait, then you are compromising one of them. Or is it possible to include both of them as a single trait?
What you mean, fertility and longevity?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is different traits. But you say fertility is so important. Of course, we have calculated and looked at the differences, and economically we find that fertility is not that important than many people think. It is. So what do I mean? So of course, to get a new calf, that is important. But if you need for this new calf 2 or 3 inseminations, or if your calving interval is 20 or 30 days longer, that doesn't make too much economic difference compared to longevity. And longevity includes all this traits, and therefore this is not compromising one of the other. So we have really calculated the economic importance of that, and many people overestimate the economic importance of fertility, whereas they underestimate the economic importance of longevity, because they look at your costs in the real farms, and I guess it's even more relative in Pakistan, how much it costs to rear or to buy a good Holstein replacement heifer compared to the amount of what you get for a milk price, what she produces. So this is, beside feed cost, replacement cost is the most important cost factor on your dairy farm. And
Okay,
fertility,
I have a
it's yeah.
Yeah. Please, you complete your.
Yeah. So it's not so much important if you get if you need 1 or 2 inseminations more to get the cow pregnant again. At the end, what counts is how much productive life she has, how many days overall her life she produces milk.
Okay, you see this argument more deeply. Then the insemination and the conception.
Yeah.
This is going to determine the herd life of the cow, right?
No, this is just one factor.
So, suppose if an animal is not going to be conceived, then its fate is to be, elimination from the herd.
Yeah, but
right?
But what I hear from your question is that you think that the only reason why animals are killed or have a too short life is because they are infertile. But that's not true. If you look really on the reasons, and in Germany we have these reasons for many years why the animals leave the herd, then that is fertility is that just the third, only the third, the number 3 reason why cows leave the herd. The number 1 reason is mastitis. The number 2 reasons in Germany is feet and leg problems, and only the number 3 reason is fertility. So 80% of the cows that are killed are not killed because they are infertile, because they have another problem. And there's another thing. If a cow is killed for infertility, she is killed at the end of the lactation. And at the end of the lactation, so she is not fertile, but she is healthy if she's killed because of fertility. So you get a good price for this killed cow. But whereas if a cow goes for ketosis, she goes at the beginning of the lactation or in the first third of the lactation. So you are missing all this milk in that lactation. She is in a bad condition, so you 10% of the cows they just die. You don't get any return on the slaughter, and then so the economic impact of these other reasons is much higher than if a cow leaves for infertility. Of course, we want to improve fertility too, but when you look at which one you should first go for, it is longevity and not fertility.
All right. So I have another question. Which method you are using for calculating EBVs? You use Bayesian approach or you use linear?
What I didn't get you.
I mean, for the calculation of the breeding value, whether we are going for the genomics breeding value or the traditional one. So which medium you use? You use the Bayesian approach or you use the linear or blood method?
I hope I got you right, but because the connection is very bad. But of course, the breeding values that we publish in Germany is the same as in US. They are all GEBV. Even for the daughter-proven bulls, you have, this is GEBV. So you always combine the daughter information with the genomic information because it gives some extra information. So it is always, the official breeding values are always GEBV for all the bulls.
Right, it's GEBV, but you calculate it based on the linear method or on the Bayesian
Yeah,
approach.
of course. I didn't mention that, but the golden standard everywhere is we use an animal blood model. So for all the traits.
Right.
Yeah, of course. Right. I didn't mention that because that is I meant when I said Germany and US are the big. We're using there always the same principles, of course, the same statistics.
Okay, based on your own experience, I mean, do you feel any serious difference between these two approaches, Bayesian and the blood method?
The what?
If we are going to apply it, then what do you suggest?
What is the other? Of course, we are using animal.
I mean, output for.
So what is the other? So we are using animal blood models. So what is the other alternative?
If we use the Bayesian approach for genomic prediction method, then do you think that the results would have some serious differences or more or less similar?
Okay. Yeah, now I can tell you. So we have done also so many, especially in the beginning of genomics, so many testing different methods. So in theory, Bayesian methods should be even better, especially in the beginning of genomics, because we had to predict more, we had more SNP effects than we had to reference animals. But it's like but in practice, it showed that the linear model is a better approach. It gives the more realistic breeding value. So this is, I think, the practice has proven that the linear models are better. And especially nowadays where we work with mixed bull and cow reference populations. So now we have much more animals in the reference population than we have effects, SNP effects we have to estimate. I think it's very clear that the linear model is better.
I personally appreciate the German system. I have studied both of them. The valuation system are both, I mean, German is better than the American. But my question is that the people are importing German cattle as well as American cattle. So if these guys, they want to go for the genomic selection, so what help we can get from the German, companies? Can they share their genomic data and we use that data to evaluate our own German imported animals? If it is possible, then how it can work out? I'm talking in context of the common farmer, because they are asking questions for the genomic breeding values for their imported animals, but the question is the reference. So if you are importing from the Germany, definitely you guys have the reference, and if you can share that data with the locals, then it may help to evaluate the animals straight away, which have been imported in Pakistan. Is it possible?
Now, I'm not sure if I got your point right, but because when we share the SNPs, I think it's very often you have to ask the bull owners because it's on the bull owners. But when we share the SNPs, there's no problem. But you can't do anything with the SNPs if you don't have the phenotype.
That's right. So that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, but the reference population, of course, the reference population that is that we have invested a lot. So I think no country, not US and not we, are willing to give you for free the reference population. No?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Moin sir. Is there anyone else who has got some questions? Please just show up and ask anything you would like to ask about this presentation. Stephen, I think I have got 2-3 questions I had received in inbox, so I think I can do that on behalf of other people. First of all, thank you very much for this very useful information that you have provided towards the evaluation system that is now applicable in Germany. I think we in Pakistani market will take some time to learn and grasp the information, but there are certainly some key learnings from today's session. One of the questions that I have got is why the German bulls, I mean the good German bulls, the highly ranked German bulls on your RZG or RZ Euro scale, they are not ranking high on the TPI or net merit ranking, for example. It's not always the case, but sometimes if you take the top 10 bulls from the German index, you put it into the TPI index, they will not be ranking much higher compared to the American bulls. Why is that so?
I think the reason is so. I think you're especially referring to the daughter-proven bulls. The reason is that the official breeding value of the German and all the other foreign bulls on the US scale is the maize breeding value, so the by interbull converted breeding value. And the problem of the conversion by interbull is because interbull converts the breeding values from one country scale to the other using a genetic correlation between the countries different from one. They estimate it, and most correlations are between 0.8 and 0.9. And that means whatever bulls or breeding value you convert, they lose a part of the information, and losing part of the information means you are regressing them more to the average. And if you then look at the top bulls, all the top bulls are regressed back to the average a little bit. And that is the reason why it is not only when you look at the German bulls, but you look of all the foreign bulls, and it is vice versa. So you have only the chance for the full spreading of the breeding values if you have enough daughters in that country on this really scale. And the problem is that that in US, because it's a very competitive market and the prices are in the market itself relatively low, and it's a big country, that only few or a small percentage of the German bulls get really enough daughters on the US base to get a breeding value with daughters on US base. And so they stay with converted breeding values, and then you don't have a chance to come to the really top because you are regressed a little bit to the average. Whereas the situation on the German base is a little bit different, because in Germany, many, at least they are used as sire of sons. So many of the top American bulls, they get daughter proofs in Germany. And that means on the German base, they get the full spreading. Huh?
All right, thank you very much. The next question I've got is that that's about, and this question is actually coming up from so many farmers, is that in Germany, you have cold weather as compared to Pakistan. So we have got like hot and humid weather. Nowadays, we are like 45 plus Celsius temperature. So do you think the German genetics will be able to perform good in Pakistani environment? Because for the US, we know that there have been like hot and humid areas as well. So that's like more reliable in terms of performance in Pakistani environment. So how do you see the German genetics can perform equally good in this type of environment?
So first, the short version. If the American genetics works in Pakistan, the German genetics will also work in Pakistan, because it's the same underlying Holstein population. So that is a short version. Why is that so? That is right. There is a difference, of course, in the climate between Pakistan and Germany. But there's also a difference in the climate between US and Pakistan, because US is not only Texas and Florida, but US is also Wisconsin, Idaho, and it's even much colder in winter time than it is in Germany. So, but that's not important. So what we have learned during the last 20 or 30 years, especially as long as Interbull is working, is that does a lot of comparison of rankings between all the country scales in the world. What we have learned is there, and I'm once again referring to the genetic correlation, and that means nothing else than how comparable is the ranking of bulls on different country scales. And then what we have learned from that is that climate is not that important. For instance, when we go into Europe, Germany exports a lot of cows and heifers and also semen to Italy and Spain. And Italy and Spain, of course, is much hotter than Germany, but the correlation is very, very high. So the ranking of the bulls based on daughters in Spain or Italy is very similar to that in Germany. But what we see is then, if you go to New Zealand, the climate in New Zealand is much more comparable to that in Germany. So it's not so hot, it's rain over there, it's green over there. But when you look at the rankings of the bulls, you find remarkable differences. So, and what is that? Even so, the climate is much more comparable. The ranking of bulls between New Zealand and Germany is much different. And this is because of the management system, because they have a grazing system with a calving season and a limited, the cows have to do it on grass in a limited time. And that is a completely different management system than the intensive system that we follow in Europe, that they follow in US, and also, like I learned this morning, that most of the commercial farms follow in Pakistan. And that is also what we see is the ranking, even in a very extreme system like in Israel, where it's very hot and also a very extreme management system because of this climate, and also because they are lacking land. Then we see that the ranking of bulls is not as much dependent on climate, but it's more dependent on the same management system. So I think that's not only my personal feeling, but also all the figures show that when we are talking about an intensive system, that means Holstein cows fed for a production level of at least 8, 9, or 10,000 kilograms with a TMR ration based on concentrate and maybe corn silage, then you get very comparable results. And the ranking of the bulls, it doesn't play a major role, the climate.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who has got question? If not, I will request Professor Dr. Sajjad Khan Sahab to share his views on the presentation, and if there is any points to be added or any questions. And afterwards, then I will invite the Honorable Provincial Minister, Livestock and Dairy Development, Snan Bahadur Darishik Saab for his views. Ji, Professor Sajjad Saab.
Thank you, Wasim Saab. I think we have learned a bit about the German genetic evaluation setup, but still a lot of things are unanswered. I wish Stephen could include all those things. Like from the very first, I think I asked if the mature equivalent is similar in both the setups. I don't know. Similarly, he has advertised the German production system and German evaluation. So maybe AgriSol can advertise next workshop asking American setup to compare themselves with the German setup. And we might have maybe different views. He has criticized that we should not be using TPI because it has a lot of confirmation. But I thought both RZG and TPI are useless for us because both emphasize protein a lot more than what we need. So, and again, we don't recommend people that to use any euro or dollar attached indexes because our production system is totally different from Europe or America. I think on standardized transmitting abilities also, I learned that how Germans are comparing themselves with the American system for those functional traits. But the simplicity that I think German setup gives, that everything is 100, and if you are above 100, you are better, and if you are below 100, you are worse or poorer. So that gives farmers, I think, a very hand-on system of evaluation, or simplicity at least. Although those who are using, they have a complicated mind, so they can maybe, they would like to see the exact EBVs or PTAs for different traits. Because if I want to calculate my own index, leaving that protein out, I should have an option. The language barrier is still there. I think I emphasized from the very beginning, we still are not used to the German nomenclature. And I said, for example, if you go to the internet now, you will find the GGI, I think, sire summary of 2020 as compared to American sire summaries of 2021. So people are, of course, looking for, things which are more recent. So they are advertising, and, for every 3 or 4 months, I think you have a new sire summary. So people are looking for something which is newer as compared to if the year is, a year older. So and then these, I told that these are not downloadable. So that person like me can't read them. You have to be on the internet, which is not 100% always available. So these things need to be looked into, I think, but it was quite interesting. I still need much more information for a person like me, who is supposed to know everything about German setup, because we are allowing in the Livestock Breeding Services Authority's rules the German semen. So, but otherwise, I think it looks now that I must plan another workshop so that my colleagues understand the basics, although Stephen was assuming that people know much more than probably the common farmers or breeder know. Because I have seen a lot of quackery, really. People are advertising things which should not be advertised. And both because they don't know, and maybe also because of the business. So a lot more need to be done. We expect maybe more audience and more seminars like this, so that people understand and they can have better decisions for their animals. So Wasim, inshallah, I'll be arranging another workshop so that we and I can compare because I'm neither German nor an American, so I can compare probably both the systems. So we'll be doing that, inshallah. Thank you very much. It was wonderful to be part of this, I think, chat in the form of this workshop. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Sajjad. Stephen, would you like to comment on the mature equivalent question that Professor Sajjad has raised?
Maybe just a short note. In Germany, we don't have an official mature equivalent calculation because we only handle, when we talk about lactation figures, we only talk about real figures, 3 or 5 days figures really produced in first, second, and third lactation. So because mature equivalent is a theoretical figure. And in genetic evaluation, we anyhow don't use lactation figures or extended figures. We have a test day model, and we only use the real test day figures that are coming from the cows. So for genetic evaluation, mature equivalent doesn't play any role.
But the US is advertising. I mean, all the bulls are advertised that their daughters have this much lactation yield, which is actually not the actual yield. They are mature equivalent yields.
Yeah. But the question is then, should we as a Germans follow that maybe not very realistic system, or should we say, okay, we are working with the real figures, and this is what they have really produced in 3 or 5 days of the cows? But I would like to also mention one other point. You mentioned, and this is very correctly, you have different payment systems for the milk and also different management systems. So you have to make up your own breeding goal. So which traits are important? But for one point, I would like to take a little bit away your concern. You say, this protein, we are not this interested in protein, but I think you are interested in Pakistan a lot in milk volume also, or the correlation between protein kilogram and milk kilogram is quite high. So when you we value in our total merit indexes, we value protein very high. Indirectly, it means that we also go a lot for milk production. So, but if you're especially interested in fat, you have to look really at the amount of fat and to value that, because the correlation between fat amount and milk kilogram is much lower than like between milk kilogram and protein kilogram. So if you go at the long end, if you go for milk, you're going also for protein, and if you go for protein, you are going also for milk. But the same is not true for fat. So if you want really to go for fat, you have to look really at the fat figures, and you are correctly. And this would be also maybe a nice idea for another workshop, just looking into the economic importance of the different traits under Pakistan and US or German system. And that to make up a little bit better your mind, what kind of traits you should go for the Pakistan situation. Because I think also this is independent from US and Germany, because US and German breeding values offer figures on all this big range of traits. So it's on you to select and to decide what is the important traits for you. What is your breeding goal and total merit index? You can make it on the base of US figures, and you can make it on the base of German figures. But you should define your own breeding goal.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think one of the important indication that you mentioned in your recent comment is that in the Germany, you're not making any projections for the lactation yield daughter performance recording on mature equivalent basis. It's always when the daughter completes their complete lactation. So that's probably different than what they do in the US. Do we have Professor Dr. Naseem Ahmed, the Vice Chancellor, University of Veterinary Animal Sciences, Lahore? Sir, if you are there, I would like to request your concluding remarks as well. All right, I think he's not available. So may I now request the Honorable Provincial Minister, Livestock and Dairy Development Department, Mr. Hasnan Bahadur Dureshik Saab, for his concluding remarks on this webinar. Dureshik Saab, please.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum ji. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Harun Lodhi, Mr. Frank, Mr. Nicholas, Dr. Stephen, Dr. Naseem Sahab, Dr. Sajjad Sahab, Wasim Sahab, and all the other participants. It was indeed a very enlightening session for me, which was based on a lot of information which our foreign experts have, I would say that, presented in their presentations. I'm not a technical person. I have been with you throughout the session and have been trying to understand all the technical things which, being non-technical, were not very much understood by me. The question and answer session, which was between Dr. Muin and Dr. Sajjad and Dr. Stephen, was very enlightening and very useful. I would just like to share my thoughts about Punjab. We are a third world country with a big population of cattle, which is fragmented, which like our 80 or 90% of the herd is between 1 to 5 cattle. We have a very small number of corporate dairy, which is a very big initiative which has popped up during last 2 decades. And I see a lot of light and a lot of hope in the prospering corporate dairy sector in the country. The role of Solve Agri has been very critical in the upcoming of this nascent industry, which is the corporate sector or the commercial dairy sector. And the collaboration of GGI-SPERMEX with Solve Agri would open new avenues for the Pakistani corporate dairy farmers to learn from the German colleagues how they are doing, what they are, how they are taking up their genetics and the dairy sector. The biggest concern for me is that we have scattered, fragmented market, and we do not have the proper database. I don't know how to improve our systems in our messes without having credible, reliable data. So I would be extremely interested in setting up our data recording system in line with international standards, with the collaboration of Solve Agri and the GGI-SPERMEX, if they can collaborate with the government and see what exactly we are doing and how should we be, how can we remove the anomalies of our data and the data recording of different segments of the dairy sector. I would also be very interested, and the government is very keen in the genetic improvement, that we would be more than happy to share our breeding plans and the breeding strategy of the province. And we would like your input of both the companies, both the companies which are joining hands, that what are your comments about our existing breeding plan and breeding policy, and how do you see that? Is it the best thing, or do you suggest us some improvements in it? The capacity building and the management system has always been very imperative in the dairy sector. So that is another area of our interest. In the end, I am grateful to Solve Agri for giving me an opportunity to listen to these international experts who have shared a lot of information which was very valuable and very useful. And I'm sure that the technical teams of our department and the academia and the university, they must have benefited from it, and looking forward to a much profitable, economically viable, environment-friendly dairy sector in the country to meet the requirement of the milk and dairy products of the masses. I thank you all for bearing with me. Have a good evening. Khuda Hafiz. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Hassan Bahadur Dureshak Sahab, the Provincial Minister for Livestock and Dairy Development Department, Government of Punjab, and thank you very much for showing up your interest in exploring the opportunities for further collaboration, how the expertise from Germany, this VIT data center, can be replicated in Pakistan. We will be in touch with you together with our German colleagues for more possibilities. So anyone else has got any questions or remark? The house is open, or then I think we can then say you goodbye in a few minutes.
Yeah, I think I would like to say thanks to Minister Saab. When it comes to the policy, Punjab government's policy, if he gives us some time in coming days, we'll be most happy to give our views to him in person. Thank you.
Alrighty, once again on behalf of Salo Agri Pak Private Limited and GGI-SPERMEX from Germany, we would like to thank you for for joining this webinar, and we hope that we will stay in touch and we'll bring in more informative and knowledgeable sessions in near future for you. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz. Goodbye.
Thank you, ji. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you so much.